A stunning development out of Washington yesterday where President Trump has fired the FBI Director James Comey. Now, this move is raising more than a few eyebrows. Democrats sounding the alarm over a possible cover-up. Actually, some Republicans have actually chimed in on that as well. And with more on all of this, joined now by our Washington bureau chief, Jackson Prosco. Jackson, we're hearing the Democrats are holding a meeting this morning around 9:30. It's expected they will demand a special prosecutor to continue to look into the Trump administration and any possible ties to Russia. What are you hearing about what's going on this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Jeff. Those calls for a special independent prosecutor are in fact growing louder, not just from Democrats, but as you mentioned, some Republicans chiming in on that too. The real concern here is that the neutrality of the Russia investigation has been lost with the firing of James Comey by a president who, of course, has a campaign team under investigation for alleged links to Russia. So in turn, what's happened here is that the president has now fired the person in charge of that investigation, and the real worry is who comes in next could have a real sway over the outcome.
I want to talk about that in a second, Jackson, but there's a lot of outrage from various political circles over this firing. And I'm just wondering, are we hearing any more this morning from the White House, and how are they spending this? And will we expect to hear from the president sometime today?
Well, the White House is still very insistent that Comey's firing was linked to his handling of the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And the letter from the Deputy Attorney General that was used as justification for all of this, it cites Comey's coming forward right before the election with that evidence related to new emails in the Clinton investigation. But, Jeff, that was really old news by now. That came out in October. So the reasons why the president just up and fired Comey out of the blue yesterday with no warning that this was coming and nobody on the horizon to take over, that's what has everyone so perplexed. And that's something that the White House is having a very difficult time explaining. No sense that the president will be speaking about this today, although he is sitting down with Russia's foreign minister in the Oval Office. You have to know that if reporters are allowed in, they'll certainly be asking questions about that today, Jeff.
And without a doubt, we're also hearing that Press Secretary Sean Spicer is unavailable today. And the rest of the week, the Deputy Press Secretary will be handling things. And back to any word as to who might replace Comey, Jackson, at the FBI. Are there any potential candidates that the president, if we heard, has in mind?
Not at this point, and that's what has observers so mystified here. Usually if you're going to do a firing like this, you've got somebody lined up to come in and take over. But with nobody on the radar, that's why there are those calls for an independent special prosecutor on Russia. That's why there are calls for the president to pick someone who is beyond reproach when it comes to their experience and neutrality. At this point, though, we don't know who could be out there, and so it all remains part of this mystery as the White House grapples with a decision that seems to have been made in a fair bit of haste just yesterday, Jeff.
Yeah, just finally, Jackson, is there any indication that some of this is sticking to Trump at all? Despite the fact that he's got very low approval ratings, he seems Teflon when it comes to this sort of thing, certainly with his base.
But this seems to be, Jeff, one of those things that might cross that line. When you've got Republicans chiming in immediately saying that they're worried about the firing of Comey, you have to know that's going to raise some real concerns inside the White House. The White House officials were apparently quite shocked by how this has gone over. They thought that their explanation of this being related to the Clinton email scandal would actually bring Democrats on board, because Democrats feel, of course, that Comey cost them the election. That's not the case here, though. Democrats are very concerned about the loss of the man who is leading the Russia investigation at the hands of the president, whose associates are apparently wrapped up in that very investigation.
All right, our Washington bureau chief, Jackson Prosco. Jackson, thanks for this.